Just trying a different setup right now, this evening, so hopefully this comes up and works quite nicely, and I don't get too distracted. Oh, there we go, there I am. It says watching the app, so maybe I'll be able to see any, maybe I'll see questions here. Anyway, so this evening, as I put in the group earlier, I think I talked about it, touched on it on Monday, that we're just going to talk about the menstrual cycle. So that is something that is going to be a little bit scientific and a little bit, what's the word? It might not be everyone's cup of tea, but as I've got more understanding of the menstrual cycle in terms of health and fitness, and not just theoretically, it's kind of opened my eyes to a few things and some considerations to make around weight loss, fat loss, how you kind of track that, how you look at it, and the effect it can have on you and your motivation and how you're feeling physically, energy-wise, and what's going on with that. So I used to teach the menstrual cycle as a secondary school science teacher. You teach it in year 7, kind of the basics, a little bit of preparation usually for the boys that's going to happen to the girls, and the girls of what's going to happen. So it's all kind of very practical, matter of fact. These are the stages. It was all taught alongside what happens in puberty, and then you go back to it and put more kind of the science and the hormone names and stuff like that with it in year 9 or 10, going into the GCSEs. So then you get more into the science. So I know about that side of it theoretically. Progesterone, estrogen, you've got luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, all these different hormones that interact to bring around the monthly menstrual cycle. But what the implications are then more on the physiology and what's going on in a lady's body, I've come to understand more in the last couple of years. And the graphic I shared earlier, and I'm looking at on my laptop now to kind of take me through this and jog my memory as we go through, actually made in May 2019. So I've been wanting to kind of get this information out there for a long time, and there's other great fitness professionals that are sharing this information, but as same with kind of a calorie deficit, a lot more people now talk about that. That's kind of fairly widespread in terms of fitness professionals talking about it. Not everyone that goes to the gym or everyone that's trying to improve their health and fitness, lose weight, drop fat, knows about it. And actually it's quite a simple principle, and I've said before that when principles are quite simple, as a professional, you think everyone knows about it, and because then kind of you're drawn to people that are similar on social media and things like that, and everyone's talking about a calorie deficit, then you think, well, surely if they're all talking about it, I don't need to talk about it that much, because people that I speak to and have contact with, they're getting the same information, they're getting it from somewhere. But with that, the principles of calorie deficit, protein, calories in and out, it's not as widely known really as you'd think. Hopefully now, by being in this group, some of these Q&As, the work I've done the last 3 years, talking to people, when I set nutrition up for people, when I set macros up for people, for MyFitnessPal, hopefully there's more of an understanding. But obviously I keep coming back to it week after week, because I think some people still don't believe, in a sense, it's that simple. And it is that simple, but there's the knock-on effect with things like this, the menstrual cycle. Now guys, you're in a sense outside of it directly. The main hormone that you've got working in your body is testosterone. Get that elevated through good nutrition and resistance training, and your body switches on even more fat burning, body changing hormones. And good levels of testosterone help regulate insulin, so helping to regulate your storage and usage of the energy you're taking in, and it boosts your immune system. Everything's going to work better. Now ladies, you've got a low level of testosterone. that exists in your body. But everything else is much more governed by progesterone and estrogen, along with all the other hormones that we've got. We've got tons of hormones in our bodies, and actually, in terms of chemically, they're steroids. That's what they are. So when someone in the gym is taking steroids, they're boosting something that's already naturally occurring. So they're overemphasizing that. So that's particularly more in guys, particularly with boosting testosterone. That's the most common methodology of taking steroids, is to boost testosterone to kind of hack the potential for muscle growth, recovery, muscle growth on top of that again. But we'll talk about the menstrual cycle. Now, the menstrual cycle is roughly 28 days, roughly a month, and over the course of a lady's general lifetime, on average, they have 400 to 500 monthly cycles. So 12 times a year, times out and out and out, up to 400 to 500. The cycle itself is basically a feedback loop. One thing happens, it causes the next thing to happen, which causes the next thing to happen, causes the next thing. There's actually 3 stages. I've marked up 4 on the diagram. 1 and 4 on this diagram, day 1 to day 28, could be the other way around, in the sense of, theoretically, often day 1 is counted on the first day of menstruation. On this particular diagram, it's got menstruation at the end. That's really to show, it gives a better picture for the hormones going up and down. So on the diagram that I shared, point number 1, we've got menstruation. Or point number 4, take it back around to the other side. Day 1, menstruation is occurring, bleeding's there, and that might go on for between 3 and 5 days. At that point, estrogen and progesterone are really low. What's happening with when the bleeding is occurring is the old lining of the womb is leaving the body, and after that it starts to build back up. So that's going to take the next 8 to 10 days. So from bleeding starting, that finishes, next 8 to 10 days, up to 14 days, estrogen rises, and that causes the lining of the womb to thicken. Now that is because after ovulation, after the egg is available in the womb, if it's fertilised, it needs somewhere to implant for a baby to grow. Now, usually in most ladies' lifetimes, that's going to be less than a handful of times, and so this monthly cycle goes on and on and on, unless you're pregnant. So, up to estrogen increases, ovulation occurs, as in the egg is released. The very fact of the egg being released causes estrogen to drop again, and progesterone comes up. Now, progesterone going up causes more thickening of the lining, because we're now in a window of the highest fertility, and that's potentially when a lady might get pregnant, and it's as that progesterone comes up and estrogen's dropping again, the womb's getting ready for that potential event. Now, progesterone then peaks up again, and estrogen comes up a little bit more, and at that point, then the body's basically accepting not going to get pregnant, and the egg's reabsorbed, as in broken down naturally in the body, and the whole cycle repeats itself. So we've got stage 1 going to stage 2, stage 3, we've got the lowest of the hormones, stage 4, everything's kind of starting again. I'm just going to bring my laptop back up so I don't lose my picture. Anyway, we've got those stages. Now, estrogen is a hormone that actually also has positive effects in the body. The significant signs are your general mood, general health, immunity, hair, skin, everything like that. Good levels of estrogen in the body are going to be boosted by healthy levels of estrogen. Estrogen usually not a problem so much with it. Can drop with times of stress, and different aspects of imbalance in the body can occur with some nutritional things, but they're not necessary. It's much harder for estrogen is much more stable in the sense of it's less affected. Now, progesterone, and the fact that then it doesn't come up at the right time in the cycle, that has much more significant effect. They need to come into balance. If progesterone can't come up, then there's much more of a knock-on effect, more to do with fat loss, weight loss. So suppressed progesterone, that's where the implications are going to be. But let's go back a step slightly and look at within the cycle what's going on in terms of kind of the outputs, how you feel, and what is going to how it's going to affect your potential training and nutrition, because how you feel definitely has a knock-on effect into those things. So at the point of menstruation, maybe you're not feeling the best. Your body is literally losing part of itself. In that period after that, up to and just past ovulation, so probably days 5 to round about 18 to 20, you're actually probably in the sweet spot of energy, potential strength, and all the kind of good stuff that can go into training. Your body's probably working at its best. Estrogen's elevating, and therefore you're feeling good, and everything else follows suit. So those two weeks, just bridging into the third week, is actually when you're going to feel the best. It's when you're going to get the most out of your training. It's when you're going to feel like it, and you're going to feel like you can eat well, stay on track. Now, after that, as progesterone comes back up, then these feelings, or the hormone levels, start to balance out, and everything's slightly down-regulating in the body. At the end of the period, in the kind of final week leading up to menstruation again, that's when you're actually going to be at your weakest. So just before the classic PMS, premenstrual stress, premenstrual tension on the body, that's when you're going to feel your worst, naturally. Now, there's actually a higher calorie demand in the body, which is cool because you might have to offset that against not feeling like you want to train at all, or that you can go at the same intensity. This is obviously talking about a natural cycle, not affected by conception or anything like that. You're going to drop off in terms of how you feel. So if we break it back again, we've actually got 2.5 good weeks physiologically where your body is in a position to change. Then after that, it's actually not in such a good position to change because it's dealing with a whole load of other stuff that's going on in terms of progesterone coming up, building the line of the womb, and going through some quite significant internal changes. What I usually say is, rather than starting to get too complicated with the amount of calories you're having, things like that, if your training naturally drops off in that week, but your nutrition basically stays the same, then you're not going to have any negative impact on your longer term goal, maybe weight loss, fat loss, getting stronger, because that natural drop off means you're going to expend less, your body's still using as much, if not slightly more, and so it kind of balances itself out. The other factor to think about with training is that because you've got that natural drop off in strength, natural drop off in strength and relative energy, you might want to step your training back. Now, using an example, that top level women's football clubs and the England ladies football team have become aware of this in the last kind of few months and have started to implement strategies around tailoring their players' training and training windows and expectations based on their monthly cycle. Now, often ladies in a closer environment, their cycles will start to sink. But there's actual now scientific papers, research done that shows that the incidence of significant knee and ankle injuries is much more raised during those 7 days leading up to and around menstruation for athletes, as in footballers, other athletes. So stuff's going on in the body whereby they're actually physically weaker and more likely to have an injury. So taking that into account, taking it back to our sort of where we're at with training, is basically to be kind to yourself and lower that expectation of what you're going to get out, particularly in that week. But having the understanding that because even though you're giving out less, your body's actually using more, which is why in those periods, leading up to periods, use that word in the wrong place, but leading up to your period, in that time, you might well feel like you need to eat more. It's when the ice cream tub might come out. It's why you're not feeling as good and your food choices might not be as good. Having that knowledge means that you know why it's happening and you can negate it a bit and detach a little bit the kind of emotional stress and struggle of leading up to your period from the choices that you're making and start to work it a little bit better for your benefit. So, just to summarise, you're going to have period, menstruation. Afterwards, you've got a good 2 into 3 weeks of everything should be working really well, and that's the time to kind of make the best of that time, and then lower the expectation of what you can get out in the week after. I look on the weekly check-in sometimes, and it'll come round ever so often where some ladies will say, felt really lethargic, didn't feel like doing very much this week, I've done 2 out of the 4 sessions I thought I was going to do, and without having to ask in a sense, pretty much say, that's the week, that's the menstrual cycle, that's the week where they actually need to drop it back a bit and not give themselves a hard time for not meeting up to that expectation of the other weeks. This also has a knock-on effect of the much kind of touted, talked about thing is 2 to 3 pounds weight loss a week. That's cool, but it's only really men who have got a steady hormone profile, steady hormone approach. Actually, by training, they're increasing that hormone, that positive hormone effect of testosterone in their body, so they can actually go through for much longer on a trajectory of yes, it's working, it's working, it's working. Whereas ladies actually have to do a little bit of work, drop the expectation, do a little bit of work, drop the expectation. So rather than saying in a month I'm going to lose £8 because it's £2 a week, £5 or £6 because I've got 2.5, 3 good weeks, and 1 week where I'm going to do well to maintain. And on top of that, in terms of getting on the scales, a lot of the time ladies get on the scales during the menstrual cycle and feel like the weight's gone up because the body needs more resources to deal with what's going on. So it's going to retain more water, it's going to retain more glucose and glycogen to put into the energy it needs for rebuilding the womb after menstruation, for higher turnover of blood cells because you're losing blood cells. So your weight might go up 2 or 3 pounds just in that period and drop off again. Train lots of ladies who have 1, 2, 3 weeks of weight loss. Suddenly it's all come back because they've gone into the week of their period, the menstrual cycle. And then afterwards they weigh themselves again, and actually they've gone that 1, 2 pounds below again because they're still doing everything right. They're still doing working with all the principles in the right places. It's just their body is going through natural fluctuations, which is one reason not to focus too much on the scales day to day, week to week, take a longer view. Now, we do often weigh ourselves more because we want to know what's going on. It's just gathering data. We use it as gathering data rather than a measure of success and focus on that success being every month, every 2 months, every 3 months, then we're going to actually, longer term, give ourselves a better mental break and work longer over time. Now, I've not been able to look at any questions or anything because I've got both cameras facing me and the laptop's gone off and I haven't got the app on the iPad, so I couldn't actually view the live. So I'm going to just whip round and see if there's anything there. And you know, this is fairly complex, and I'm happy to kind of type it out and try and explain it better, or find somebody else's explanation that might be that little bit better and post that as well. I'm not saying I know absolutely everything about this, but I have been researching it with the purpose of kind of helping as many ladies as possible understand why they go through these kind of cycles of it's working, it's not working, it's working, it's not working, and to also start to build in expectations or a better expectation of what can actually be done month to month. And actually physically, you know, you need to have that week where it's steady away and ease it back a bit. And in some training programs that gets built into what's called a deload week. There's somebody at Flax who I was talking to, and they were doing a 4-week rolling cycle with another personal trainer. Cool, that's a great way of doing it. Build up, try and hit a new maximum rep on squat, deadlift, whatever it is, and then taper off and go up around again. So it's like a rolling program. But I said to her, have you matched your rolling program of weights that you're lifting to your monthly cycle? Because you're naturally going to have a week where you don't feel like, aren't capable, as physically capable, and as the more research has come out, potentially more at risk of injury on that certain week. Why don't you match that to your deload week? I said, no, it doesn't match to the deload week. So actually, she was trying to get improved lift on the week when physiologically things weren't in the best ballpark area. So matching that week up, her deload week then, the week where she's taking it a little bit easier, to the week when naturally she should be taking it easier, actually helped to get more out of the programme over the subsequent months by a little tweak round. And fair play to the other trainer for kind of taking that on board and going, oh, that's a good idea. In a sense, that's what it's about. We're always learning. There's always more research being done. There's always more ideas trickling down, and the more me as a professional can get those ideas to you, and separate the kind of Daily Mail headline research things to actually the nuts and bolts and things that are actually going to help. Hopefully, the better it is in the long term, and the more valuable that is to you. What I haven't gone into is any kind of diagnosis and ideas and things to alleviate any acute cases, because everyone's individual, and I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to suddenly say, well, it sounds like you have got low levels of progesterone, and so you need to do something about it. I can potentially recommend on a one-to-one basis in terms of looking at different things, and then go from there. And also in the field of what's going on with different contraceptive methods, I need to do more research on that, because with the best intentions, when something's being sold commercially or used commercially by the doctors, the NHS, the research is going to be harder to find on the negative sides. Just because something's been cleared for safe medical use doesn't mean there aren't side effects, and it's the side effects are usually in a what's the right word for it? An acceptable margin. So in any sort of drug use, in terms of medical drugs, you always get your bit of paper, don't you? Even paracetamol, ibuprofen, that give all the kind of hazards and potential things like disclaimers of if you take too much of this and that. There's acceptable margins of side effects with everything, and that doesn't mean they're not real, and they will be individual because everyone's different physiologically, internally, and so I'm not going to start recommending things now. If you've got this, and this, then do this. But I'm happy to kind of start to look at that with people on a one-to-one basis. But probably what I would say is, once we can go to the doctors, if you suspect any of these things, you need to go and get that properly checked out. So hopefully that's been helpful. Hopefully it's not just been a jumble of science and practical things. So summary of the practical things is, ladies, work with your cycle and focus on the good times, and be nicer to yourself. Give yourself a little bit of a break in the times when you're going to be lower on energy and less feeling like training. And that's not to say don't keep doing activity. That's not to say don't keep persevering, don't keep sticking to the nutrition plan, but understand what's going on and give yourself a little bit of a break, and not set your expectations super high in terms of it's bang, 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 bang in terms of weight loss. I'm doing everything right, nothing's changing, doing everything right, putting weight on. There's going to be potential reasons for that, as long as it's not actually I just burned all my calories every single day and ate too much. There we go. So hope you have a good Wednesday evening. We've got a fire going outside, nice candle on to keep the insects away. There might be a homemade donut around for me. I'm not 100% sure. There's not a homemade donut. Good thing then that one of my clients was going to Aldi at the same time as me today and dropped me some buns. Thank you, Ellen. Right, going to jump off now. Have a good evening. See you tomorrow morning, 8 AM for that stretch workout, and tomorrow night for a lower body glutes workout. Looking forward to another good day. I'm doing fitness online tomorrow. See you then.